kind of like that one.
Oh, I'm ruined.
Oh, wait, so you have seen the new one?
Yeah, that's why he's here.
That's the only reason I'm here. Besides for it to look pretty, I'm also here for that.
Also his looks, of course.
Almost. Okay.
Almost.
All right. Well, let's let Kate do the intros and all the business stuff out of the way.
Alrighty, for once we're not breaking fire code in this room.
All right. By the way, also come to our Game of Thrones panel later.
And help us break fire code.
And help us break fire code like we did yesterday. So.
They're not going to move y'all after that?
Maybe.
I mean, they haven't told us that they moved us. They'll probably wait until our panel started and then move us afterwards. But, you know.
Yeah. So, anyways, thank you for joining us. We are the Knights of the Drunk Watch. This is going to be a very intimate panel. We're all just going to be discussing mostly the resurgence of what we're calling the Stephen King Assance, which happened originally in the 90s. Lots of Stephen King movies happening, and we're going to talk about the originals. We're going to talk about all the new stuff that's planned, all the new stuff that's coming out.
So we always do introductions at the beginning of our talks, and we also are the Knights of the Drunk Watch, so we have a saying that we say at the beginning of every talk that we do. One of us says we're the Knights of the Drunk Watch, and then everyone repeats, and now our talk begins. So I'm Kate.
I'm Jacob.
I'm Audie.
I'm Mark.
We are the Knights of the Drunk Watch,
and now our talk begins. Also, side note, we are filming ourselves. If you want to see, we're recording ourselves. If you want to see, for some reason, another recap of this or another viewing of this panel, it will be on our Patreon. Don't forget to follow us on YouTube. We do reactions and drinking games. But if you are in the witness relocation program and can be identified by your voice, we are filming ourselves. So
just ourselves, but we're recording our audio.
And we would love to talk to you, so please don't be afraid to talk to us. So.
I don't know.
Too many
I
memes.
always broke everything.
Everything is
there we
ruined.
Okay, I didn't really prepare a full slideshow for everything, so I'm just going to kind of be clicking around at random pictures. Okay, so I say we start with Carrie, because that was the first film adaptation of Stephen King's book.
It was also, I believe, his first novel. I think Carrie was the first novel that he ever wrote, or that he published. I think he wrote Rage and some short stories before that.
But he used a pseudonym for those ones.
Because he was Richard, what was it? I'm sorry?
Bachman.
That's it, Richard Bachman. So that was his first officially published book. It's fitting that it would be his first movie.
Mm-hmm. Now, I know, one of the reasons that they are remaking a lot of Stephen King's work is because, back early on in his career, he didn't really have much control or say-so over how things were adapted. And, but I think that the original Carrie with Sissy Spacek actually is still really good and still holds up to this day. I just think Sissy Spacek is fantastic in that. I mean, she captures, in the beginning, just this very sad, quiet, shy, insecure girl, and then she definitely has the crazy eyes for the later part.
Her ability to transition from being completely vulnerable to being just completely manic, and it's such an interesting thing for not only Stephen King but also movies in the 90s to tackle, because there's a lot of issues like mental illness, bullying, violence against females, a lot of modern issues that we're still dealing with today that were being addressed by Stephen King as a pioneer way back in I think he wrote this one in the 70s, I believe, while he was still in school, he wrote Carrie. So I find that really interesting that it still holds up so strongly as a story all by itself. No CGI needed. It's a story that I think is completely timeless, and it's a movie that's completely timeless. And I don't know how everybody here feels about any of the many other adaptations that have come out since then. Anybody have?
I think the one in 2013 was sort of the biggest one. They did The Rage, Carrie 2.
I didn't hate that one. So let me just start off by saying I didn't hate Carrie 2 The Rage. I like that they brought back the only surviving character from the original Carrie movie as a teacher at the school. I did find that to be like a nice transition, but we didn't get anything new. Like, it was just yet another of the exact same story with a modern girl. So there was nothing really that interesting about it that changed my life. Does anybody have any opinion? You guys, we want to hear from you. So anybody have any opinions on Carrie, or if they would choose to remake Carrie once again? No. Awesome.
I think no. I don't think any more remakes are necessary. And then this one in 2013, I can't remember her name.
Chloe Grace Moretz.
Yeah, I mean,
She was Hit Girl and.
Yeah, she was Hit Girl. She was great as Hit Girl.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't think she was
as-
bad in this one. I just think, I've seen her in a lot of other things where she plays like the popular girl, the pretty girl and such. So I just don't think she was the best choice for that. I mean, she's not a bad actress, I don't think.
No, but there is a certain look that Stephen King describes in the book that Carrie has that's sort of fragile and not quite beautiful, like always hidden behind her hair and all that, that I think Chloe Grace Moretz just didn't embody, and Sissy Spacek always will. So, now I don't believe that Carrie is part of the Stephen King Assance, but we did want to address it because I don't think anyone personally, I don't believe anybody should touch that movie. Like, it's not ever going to get any better. And John Travolta as a young, I think that was his second movie.
I forgot John Travolta was in that.
I think it was like maybe his second movie. And then we've got, what's her name that plays the mean girl? Oh gosh, I totally blanking. I'm sorry? Yeah, I think so. She wound up being in a bunch of other, 80s movies. She's fantastic as a mean girl who's actually like vicious and violent. A lot of the times you see mean girls in these movies be like, verbally abusive or whatever. This girl is
very
violent. And for Stephen King as a writer to encapsulate that aspect of teenage girls, which are not, he is not a teenage girl. So I think it's fantastic that he was able to capture such truth to that for any of us who were bullied in high school. So I thought it was fantastic. I cannot stop staring at your makeup. It's so awesome. Like, I love it.
Free painter, down by the Sprint store. She was a clown too. So.
It looks awesome. I love it. Thank you for wearing it.
Okay, now let's talk about The Shining. Is there anyone who really likes the original one with Jack Nicholson? Okay. I was reading a lot of what Stephen King thought of it, and he was not happy with it at all. I mean, first, he didn't like the casting of Jack Nicholson because the thing is that he starts off crazy. I mean, he's Jack Nicholson. He is the original Joker and such, so it's like he didn't have much of a character arc as far as, him slowly losing his sanity and stuff. He kind of already came off as creepy and scary from the get-go. Stephen King also didn't like the fact that they left out a lot of the other undertones of the story that he was trying to capture. Like, they didn't really touch much on Jack's alcoholism and such. He just, I don't know. Anyone? Thoughts?
The reason we kind of included this one is I actually just found this out earlier. They are actually making a sequel to The Shining. It is in production. It is called Dr. Sleep, and I believe it is an actual original story by Stephen King that he wrote, which actually follows Danny Torrance, the son of Jack Torrance.
Who Ewan McGregor is playing.
Ewan McGregor has been cast as, and allegedly it's supposed to come out this year. I have not seen hide nor hair of a trailer yet. Have you?
Then I haven't seen shit for it now.
Yeah, so I'm really excited about that, but I agree with you. I feel like this Shining, while atmospheric, and I think we're more into The Shining because of the behind the scenes stuff that happened with the filming of this.
But I mean, at the same time, it's kind of become like this pop culture icon. There's so many iconic scenes and shots and things that are in The Shining. There's so many things now harken back to. So it kind of set this trend
the
of
twins
what needs to happen.
Here Comes
the
Johnny.
Elevator filled with blood. And there's so many things that just either parody it or just directly call back to it. So.
Yeah, well, and the treatment of what was her name?
Shelley Duvall.
Shelley Duvall backstage is infamous.
Like,
Everybody
Stanley
knows.
Kubrick literally drove her insane to try and get a performance out of her.
I think Stanley Kubrick drove everybody insane on that
But
movie.
I mean, there's all the weird shit that all the weird conspiracy theory sort of stuff that goes with The Shining too. Like, oh, it's just like it's to prove that the moon landing was fake and Stanley Kubrick filmed it.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that's just him admitting to it. It's like, okay.
And there's a lot of history behind this original Shining. I don't know if you guys have ever seen the documentary. It's Room 2237, I think is what it is, or 2307. I can't remember exactly if there's a zero in there. But there was an actual documentary about the Room 237 within this hotel. I was on Netflix for a while. I'm not sure if it is. And just not only does it delve into the conspiracy theories, but all the problems and the issues that they faced behind the scenes because of supposed real hauntings. So there is a lot of behind the scenes and like you said, iconic moments that have made this movie memorable. But I'm with Stephen King. I think that Jack Nicholson started off playing the end. He played the end, and we didn't get to see happy-go-lucky Jack
Did y'all
Nicholson
see
first.
Did y'all watch the miniseries?
We started watching it. We didn't get around to finishing it. So, because Stephen King was not happy with Stanley Kubrick's Shining in 1997, he produced his own miniseries with Jack Weber and Rebecca De Mornay, which I really like this one because
I love it.
Like he starts off as a normal everyday guy, and then he slowly goes insane.
And I think what I like most about it, I mean, The Shining, of course, deals with a lot of themes of like child abuse and spousal abuse and all sorts of things like that, and of course, again, mental illness, which seems to be a very strong thread through Stephen King's writing. But this Jack Torrance is so subtle in the beginning because he's so likable, and he makes you really want to hang out with him and be his friend, and then suddenly he's hitting his son because of his alcoholism, and it's such human problems that I feel like the Jack Nicholson version didn't deal with. The Jack Nicholson version was a lot more supernatural, dealing with the hotel. This deals with everyday domestic abuse problems. So.
And also Jack Nicholson, it's one of those things of at the begining of the movie he's Jack Nicholson, so it's well, he's gonna go nuts because he's already there because we know Jack Nicholson, but we know him and he's a good guy. In everything he does, he's like a
it was in the 80s, the early 80s when the original one came out, so he wasn't the Joker yet.
Yeah, but have you seen
he was
it,
One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest had come out, yes. So
and also his
face,
his persona is just a little
call him out like that.
I mean, sorry, he cultivates
persona,
it.
not face, but okay.
He cultivates it. I mean,
he
come
does.
on.
Whereas as this actor Jack Weber is
Jack Weber.
Jack Weber is he's wings and he's
Yeah.
He's
Has anybody
good.
seen this version of The Shining? You've seen it? What do you think about it?
It was definitely much truer to the books.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it's because it's produced by Stephen King, and you know what's funny is we were watching it. I have to say that some of the stuff in there is both creepy and sort of cheesy. As the grass animals are they're playing a game of Red Rover or whatever with it. It's really interesting. But it still holds up.
And I remember in this one, the woman in the bathtub was far scarier.
Oh my
I
gosh.
thought.
Visually and suspense wise, I feel like this one is stronger. Stanley Kubrick relied on a lot of gimmicks, whereas this one just gives you sort of, one was too cerebral. This one is just pure horror, just in its pure form. Anybody else seen this version so far? I highly suggest it. You can get it on DVD. It was a mini series actually, because a lot of Stephen King stuff was in mini series in the 90s. In the early 2000s. And
well,
so
miniseries are good, especially for novels, because you can take
Stephen
more
King novels.
time and you can cover more of the book and not
But
have
then
to.
you don't have to try and fill an entire show.
Right, yeah.
You
it's
know,
not,
which is the downfall of some
Yeah.
books to TV shows. It's you have 10 episodes at the minimum. It's oh, you're never gonna do that.
Yeah. And now I will tell you, this one is super 90s in flavor, but it's very, very good. I highly recommend watching it. It really gets you. It's very atmospheric and interesting, and the acting is great. Rebecca De Mornay is amazing in it. I love her. The kid is great. I like him better than the kid in the original Shining. It's well worth it. Put that one on your list of things to rent off of Netflix if that's still something people do. Okay, that's how we did it.
Any other comments on The Shining?
Anyone want to see the new Dr. Sleep that's coming out? Especially with Ewan McGregor, I think that's going to be really interesting. All right. Sorry? Yeah, well, now I want to read the book because I loved The Shining. It's one of his great masterpieces. Right now, we just started reading The Stand for the first time, and we're
because
like,
they are, of course, remaking that as well.
yeah,
So I'm really looking forward to that.
Yep,
it's gonna be another. I think this one's going to be a full-blown TV series as opposed to just a mini series this time.
Yeah, I'm really excited.
There's not a whole lot of like solid details about like they haven't cast anybody as far as I know. Like it's super kind of
and oddly enough,
at this point.
Mark and I have never seen the original, and now I don't want to watch it until I read the book because I just started reading the book. But I do. I mean, I've read like the first like quarter of the book, and I love this whole. I'm an author, and I'm really into like reading where the author himself was in his life and what was going on in the world around him when they write the book. And it was written in the late 70s, early 80s. It's mid 80s, late 80s.
I think it was mid 80s. No, actually, I don't
mid
know.
80s. Okay. It was right at the height of the Cold War. Nuclear power was becoming a really big threat to everybody's daily lives. Chernobyl was going on, late 90s that happened, but everybody was concerned about nuclear plants, possible leakage, things like that. And I find the beginning of the book to be so powerful. Even today, I was reading it and I was like, I think that's what makes Stephen King so awesome is how timeless his stories are. They will apply all across the universe. It doesn't matter if you're reading it from, the 1950s. All their issues are still our issues. So the timing does barely even matters, which I think is what makes him so good at being adapted to film. So, okay.
Let's talk about it.
I was supposed to be dressed as Pennywise today. I'm really sorry that I didn't get a chance to do that. So
yeah, this is a tricky one because, we all did kind of grow up with the Tim Curry version. In fact, I was 5 when it came out, and this was back when we only had like 10 TV channels, and it was on like ABC. And I remember, and I stumbled upon it, and it was the scene. Sorry, I'm not spoiling it. Kate hasn't seen the original yet, but it was where Pennywise is digging a grave, and he's trying to terrify Bill. And then he does that big old thing with his teeth, and I was 5 years old, and I stumbled upon that, and it haunted me forever.
We used to watch it. My cousins and I used to watch it. We were watching it one night, and I remember that we were like really freaked out. I think it was right before the whole spider disaster at the end, and and I remember we heard tapping on the windows, and my parents were knocking on the windows trying to freak us out. Like it is part of the fabric of our childhoods. But in my very strong opinion, I feel like if you go back and you watch it now, because it was made for television, because it was an ABC family, kind of thing, it's still borderline cheesy. Like it leans heavily into the funny aspect as opposed to leaning heavily into the horror aspect. It's like funny with dots of horror around it. Whereas the new movie, I will bow down and worship at the altar of the new It. I'm obsessed with it. Yes, your feelings, your thoughts.
Oh no, that was just like an amen.
Yeah, no, I mean, as much love as I have for Tim Curry, Bill Skarsgård was born to play this part. And I don't know if you guys know the story about the eye thing. Does anybody know the story about the eye thing?
I don't think there is a story.
There is.
Other than he did it himself. That wasn't.
Well, no, there is a story because originally the guy, they were doing auditions. When they were doing auditions, the director had decided that was part of something that they were going to CGI into the role. They wanted Pennywise for his eye to kind of do this weird lazy thing. And Bill Skarsgård came in and auditioned, and he was like, "Oh, and we're, let me see your eyes because we're gonna try and do this thing with the eyes." And Bill Skarsgård was like, "Are you gonna? I can do this thing where I move my eye to the side." And he did it, and the director lost his mind, cast him immediately, and was like, "Yes."
I think Hugo Weaving was the other person they were considering. He was one of their other top choices. But what I love about Bill Skarsgård's performance is he captures this childlike quality for Pennywise, and you can see a lot more of him like toying with the kids, like really trying to terrify them and feeding off of their fear. Like you see just how much he's taking from them by terrifying them, because he could have killed them at any time. I mean, he was just playing with them and he was having fun with it. And I think one of the wisest decisions they did for this film was they decided in the beginning this can be rated R. We are not holding anything back. And it also added a lot of humor, allowing all the kids to cuss.
I also I was reading the book right before the movie came out, so I read through the whole book, which is a whopping 450,000 words. It's one of the longest books in history.
It's big.
It takes forever to read. Because there's so much history involving Pennywise and him arriving here and Mr. Gray and all of that. And I remember reading the book and actually being terrified. And not just that, but I like that they split this up into having the children and the adults, because a lot of the book is, we got back here and we're going to reminisce about, our time when we were kids. In all fairness, in the books and in the miniseries, the adults don't do much. They get there, they reminisce about all the stuff, and then they go to fight Pennywise. So, I mean, spoiler alert, but that's kind of the basics of what they do. And I think what they're going to do in this next movie, which we will talk about. Yeah, you want to go do that?
Has anyone seen the new trailer that just came out?
We're about to drop the trailer right here live. Here we go.
I'm going to find it.
If you guys don't want to get spoiled.
Well, I'll defend myself
it's a
because I haven't
trailer.
seen the original. That's not necessarily true, but I've seen it maybe once. And then they were like, you can't go back and watch it because we want to watch the new ones with you and watch you watch them. And I was like, okay, that's fine.
You haven't seen the new one
I
either?
saw the new one with Mark and Andrew.
Yeah.
Because they were like, you can't see any of it because we have to see it with you. And I was like, that's fine. So I haven't
Okay.
seen the trailer either. I'm very excited.
Okay.
Can you connect it to your speaker? No, that's too much work.
I don't. I have that. Whoa. Whoa. What's happening?
You didn't press play.
No, hold on.
Oh, you have to
Drink for technical difficulties.
Mark, you want me to?
That's one of our rules.
No, I got it. There we go.
Oh, that's a good cast already.
Oh, the cast is amazing.
Okay.
Move the mic in front of it.
Sorry. Can you hear it?
Hold, please.
Sorry. I'm gonna start it. I'm trying to get.
Your thing says it's.
Oh
only
yeah,
80.
maybe if we turn that up too.
Oh wait, here. Let's.
Oh yeah, turn that all the way up, please.
Oh.
There we go. That's a little better.
Won't you come in? It's the least I can do. Is it like you remember, Cleaner? Well, you feel free to look around while I get the water boiling.
Wait.
There you go. Now some music. I do apologize. It gets so very hot here this time of year. You feel like you could just about die.
Who else is
You don't want to fight a naked woman. You don't want to fight a naked dude. Doesn't matter. You don't fight him.
This is a good cast.
Oh yeah.
Bill Hader is amazing.
So excited.
I'm pretty pumped for
I'm
that.
so hype. Get hype.
Okay.
So yeah, that's coming out September 2019. We thought it was going to be October. It looks like it's coming out a little
They're
bit
getting-
earlier. Oh, and sorry.
What is happening?
Where's that coming
Go
from?
back to YouTube and
Oh, whoops.
Sorry.
Okay.
again, just a preview of our later panel.
Yeah, join our Game of Thrones panel later at 3 to 4 p.m. So yeah, now I have to say, I read the book and I did not expect the ending. Who here has read the book? Who is still emotionally traumatized by that ending?
Wait,
You
what?
guys don't remember the weird, creepy child orgy that occurs in order for them to get out? I don't think anybody will ever be brave enough or dumb enough to ever put that on screen. So thank God everybody skipped
I was
all
really
of that.
questioning what they were gonna do about it.
I
in
was
the
very-
remake, so I'm like, what are they gonna do about that?
I had
All right, they
many
bailed.
concerns.
Good. That's probably for the best.
Yeah, no, we're not in a place in society right now where anybody should do that. But
or ever, maybe what?
Or
like,
ever,
maybe
not
it's
ever.
yeah,
Please
not,
no.
That's not a future or past good thing
it should
either.
never occur.
No, but I am very curious how they are going to film the end of the book. I mean, the final battle, because obviously in the 1990 version, there is no giant spider in the book. In fact, the director of the original one had no idea that there was going to be a spider. He apparently showed up to set one
Spider.
day, and they're like, "Here's a giant spider," and he's like, "What?" But I mean, in the books, it's like they like. What did you do? Like travel to another dimension and have like a
Yeah,
battle
and
of will?
So
wits?
I think that's what they're going to probably address a lot more of in this new one is kind of Pennywise's past and how to defeat him. For the people that have read the books, they did allude to the giant turtle in the first one.
Turtle.
The giant turtle is, of course, the supposed creator of the universe that helps them defeat Pennywise. He's almost the antithesis to Pennywise. But just to give a little bit of extra background, Pennywise is actually mentioned in a lot of Stephen King's universe. He is mentioned in Dreamcatcher, which is not a favorite for a lot of people, but it is for me because another one of his aliases is Mr. Gray. A lot of people have wondered if he is the Mr. Gray from Dreamcatcher. He's also mentioned in the Body, which Stand By Me was based off of. And then there are quite a few others that he's mentioned in. I can't remember all of them right now.
Well, I mean, Stephen King's books are all weirdly tied in. So there's like The Mist, in theory, like has to do with like other things that are going on
Yes.
in there.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you guys are going to cover this or not, but so Castle Rock, the new Hulu show that like kind of takes the whole Stephen King universe and like mashes it
Yeah.
together. Like, what are you guys' thoughts on that?
So we did a whole series of reactions.
Yeah, we all watched it. I really enjoyed it. There were a couple people in our group that were disappointed with the ending.
I didn't watch
I
last
was not.
episode, so
You're about to get spoiled.
Well, I
it's
don't, it's been a
fine.
while, so I don't remember all the details of it. But
Actually, has anybody seen it here, Castle Rock? Okay, so we will not spoil it.
Yeah.
It is a Hulu original. It's a set of 10 episodes, I believe. And it takes place within the Stephen King universe in Castle Rock, the fictional town of Castle Rock. And what it does is it actually... it's like Disney World for Stephen King. They just bring in every character that you can imagine in some
there's
weird...
references to a lot of his other stories. I
Yep.
think they reference Jack Torrance.
Yes.
Shawshank, of course.
Shawshank.
Yeah.
It takes place in Shawshank.
Yeah.
Or
The,
like a city
the
that has
geography for
shopping.
Castle Rock is a little wonky if
Yeah.
you compare it to other things. It doesn't quite line up where things should actually be. They kind of consolidate
Yeah,
things.
they take
that's
artistic
fine.
license, and it stars as one of the main characters, Bill Skarsgård. So
Yep.
he is not Pennywise. I'm just gonna spoil that for you right now.
And it's also what do you call it? That they wrapped up the entire story.
Yeah, it's almost like a mini series because they do the entire. It's kind of like American Horror Story, where they do one entire series. Now they have just been renewed for season 2. It's coming back, and it looks like season 2 has cast Lizzie Kaplan as what is her name?
Annie Wilkes.
As Annie Wilkes. So it's gonna
Misery.
Yeah, it's
If
going to
you are
focus
familiar with
on
Misery.
Misery and her story. It's still going to be set in Castle Rock. Annie Wilkes will arrive in Castle Rock. And then there's going to be kind of more, of course, other stories converging. I'm hoping we go back to, what's her name, Torrance, because we didn't really delve
that's
into
true. Yeah, she
her
wasn't
story.
really that huge.
There's Annie Wilkes.
Yes, Jackie Torrance. And there is definitely going to be a, for those of you who haven't watched it, the ending is very divisive, but I think it's very Edgar Allan Poe. It like harkens back to Edgar Allan Poe, where you're just left in numb horror wondering what. So I highly recommend that one too. So 2 things you got to watch when you get out of here. You got to watch the Shining series, and you got to watch Castle Rock, because it's worth it.
It is, and it is such like coming from the stance of I haven't seen a ton of. That's my role here in the group is I haven't seen things, and that's
We just
fine.
tie her to chairs and
Yeah.
make her watch stuff.
Yeah, basically they're like, watch it, you have to, it's great. But having not, like, I'm not well steeped in the Stephen King lore or universe, and it was still a very good show. And then it was also heightened by the fact that they'd be like, this is this is this. That's this. I was like, ooh, like all very good connections.
Non-stop
But-
Easter eggs for those of you that
Yeah.
are like really into Stephen
But also,
King.
like, on its own, it's also a very good. I thought it was a very good show.
Beautifully
Haven't
acted.
watched the last episode, but
I
will.
think the guy who plays Mike in the new It is also the same guy that is in Castle Rock as well. I might be wrong about
I don't
that,
know.
but there's a lot of crossovers from other shows, and it also stars the amazing John Locke. What's his name? Terry
Terry
O'Quinn,
O'Quinn.
who was also in a Stephen King movie when he was younger. He was in Stepfather. If you have not seen Stepfather, that one is scary as hell with John Locke.
And it has. Oh, did we already say it as Pennywise?
Yes, it does have Bill Skarsgård. There's a bunch of other people that are in. What's her name from Rose Red? Plays
Sissy
the
Spacek?
Sissy Spacek is in it. Duh.
Yeah. Oh, gosh.
Sissy Spacek is
She's
great.
amazing.
She's amazing in it. She's so good. I'm hoping I get to see Kathy Bates in the next one. Wouldn't that be amazing?
That would be
Apparently,
good.
throw my phone off.
So
Well-
yeah, definitely check that one out.
I pulled up this picture because I didn't really finish the PowerPoint. But this is part of the list of Stephen King movies that we do not think need to be remade. Misery is one of my favorites, and you just can't. I don't think you can touch that one. And let's see what else I think does not need to be remade is The Shawshank
yeah.
Redemption.
Let's just not and say we
Totally good.
did.
No, that movie is so good. I
How
love
could
that
you
one.
ever recast Morgan Freeman?
And also, I feel like that's one.
And Tim
where-
Robbins did what?
I mean, he was fine.
All right, sure, both
Where's
of
my
them.
shade fan? I'm gonna drink for some
I
shade.
feel
I'm
like
just-
a lot
does not need-
of like his, since they are horror, a lot of his books, like when you do horror, it tends to be dated. Like that just tends to be true. But prison movies, not a lot changes and like is with the times in prison movies.
But I mean,
so,
like she said, lots of Stephen King's just tend to kind of go with the flow, and
Yeah.
like they tend to kind of age really, really well.
It's because he deals with such human emotions. Yes, he does it through the spectrum of horror, but he's dealing with our everyday horror. He looks at a person and he thinks, okay, what scares a normal person in their everyday life, and how can I create that feeling and then amp it up with the supernatural?
Well, I mean, it's like, so the Dark Tower. Do you have something for the Dark Tower? Do we need to move on?
I don't.
well, Dark
All
Tower is
right.
part of the stuff we want to talk about, though.
All right. So the Dark Tower, you get into Randall Flagg, which, like you're saying, it's human stuff. So Randall Flagg is all about just what is the nature of true evil, like, because I mean, basically, originally he was just this mortal dude who kind of sought out this like power and
That's in
ended
The
up
Stand, right?
gaining like Well, not exactly. It was his first appearance.
Was it? I thought the body was his first appearance because they for sure talk about Randall Flagg in the body.
The thing is that Randall Flagg, and he's been known by so many different names that eventually it became retconned that he's been like extra people. So even when he started within the Dark Tower, where he's like the main antagonist, there were other characters that were supposed to be completely separate things, but then like, 2 or 3 books down the line, he's like, oh, by the way, that's actually Randall Flagg is a different character. So he's actually been all of these people.
I do think he is also almost like a stock evil character. Any Dark Tower fans in here? Who loves Dark Tower? Hey, there we go. The books. Yes, that is our feeling as well.
All right, so if you just completely isolate the movie by itself with no expectations, it's not the worst movie ever. But if you have it does have some really awesome people in it. But then once you like have read anything or have like any background in the books, then it's like, what the fuck is happening here? But at the same time, people got this like real weird like bad taste in their mouths from the reviews and things like that, which is kind of this trend that's been happening lately where critics will just immediately bash it, and then like you have all the trolls that come out of the woodwork and be like, oh, shit all over this. But so I remember reading a review for The Dark Tower before I went and saw it, and then I went and saw it, and I was like, so from watching it, comparing the review to me watching and actually seeing the movie, I don't think the person that actually did the review ever watched the movie. Because they're like, all this stuff wasn't explained. I was like, no, it was literally explained within the first 5 minutes of the movie. There's literally like the intro thing that explains what the fuck's going on. So you must have been asleep for the first 5-10 minutes of the movie and just not paid attention at all. So I don't know.
From what I understood, it is actually a sequel to the entire Dark Tower series was the movie. It wasn't supposed to be starting a new Dark Tower series. It was technically supposed to be ending
I think that was the original concept, and it ended up not being that, and they just
That's probably why there was massive confusion and disaster.
They just kind of went with, we're just going to cram like all of these books into like an hour and a half or 2 hours or whatever it was.
All the books.
Yeah, pretty much. Like
that's just madness.
Does anybody care about spoilers for it?
Yes, I'm reading them right now.
Not about the book, about the movie.
movie, not. Okay.
All right, so it doesn't matter. All right, he kills the man in black like at the end of the movie. He dies. So it's like an hour and a half, 2 hours, and he's dead. That's it. It's done.
There are like 6 books. I mean,
technically, there's more because he's added.
He's still
more.
writing them now.
The last one I think was in 2013. He added another one.
So he actually started the Dark Tower series. He wanted to write his own version of fantasy. I also am reading. I'm reading The Stand, and I'm steeped in Stephen King right now. But he started the Gunslinger series or Dark Tower series with the Gunslinger because he wanted to write his own version of like a fantasy story. And he wrote the first 4 books, and then he just set it aside because he wasn't sure how he felt about the whole thing. And then I think it took him like 20 years to go back and write it again. And now he's
Writing again until after he was hit by the van.
That's exactly, which is also when he wrote Dreamcatcher. He wrote Dreamcatcher after he got hit by the van. But it's really interesting to see this writer's like spectrum of a career written into these books because he wrote these first 4 when he was so young and still a young author. And then he went back and redid them. There's several versions of them from what I understand. And then he went back and started finishing it off. And I like that spectrum that you get to see where he started and where he ended as a writer. But I'm still on the first book, so don't judge me too harshly. Yeah, I'm sure they do, but I'm along. I mean, it's Stephen King, kid orgy. Like, I'm along for the ride. Like, whatever he does is fine by me. All right, Jacob, time for you to talk.
Oh, good. I get to talk about stuff? All right. So, Pet Sematary. All right. So, admittedly, it's been a little while since I've watched the original. So, I remember, like, obviously, the hugest difference would be... wait, how much am I supposed to...
Who has seen the new Pet Sematary? All right, so we won't spoil the new Pet Cemetery.
If you've seen the original movie, you pretty much know what's happening.
Okay, yeah. I mean, like, we know what happens, basically.
So
we just don't know how it ends.
The biggest difference is that instead of Gage being the little boy being the one that gets turned or resurrected, it's the girl.
Okay.
So that's the biggest difference. So one of the most important things about that is Gage is really young. Gage is what, like, he's like a little itty bitty kid. Whereas Ellie, sorry, I'm shit with names, so I might call people by the wrong names. It's just whatever. You'll get the idea. So Ellie is older though. Ellie is like 8 or 9, I think. So she is more conscious of the terrible things that she's doing, in my opinion. Or, I mean, I feel like at least at that age, you kind of get start getting the gravity. You're like, well, is Grandma really dead, or did she actually go away, or is my dog, did it actually get sent to the farm, or is it just dead? You kind of start grasping that. So she's kind of at the age where that happens. So I feel like the impact of what she's doing is more of something that she's thinking about. Whereas for Gage, he's a little kid. He doesn't quite understand yet the concept of life and death and permanence and things like that. So I think her being the one that gets resurrected is a little bit more impactful, maybe. I gotta admit, I originally had no intention of seeing this movie. But then I watched the trailer, and I was like, damn it, John Lithgow's in this movie. I love John Lithgow. Fuck you, John Lithgow. You're going to make me see this movie. So I did that, and I went and saw it because of John Lithgow.
And you liked it? Your final review is you enjoyed it?
Yeah, I enjoyed the movie. It's a good movie. In my opinion, I tend to be kind of lenient. I have a lot of friends that are like, oh, this movie was shit. And I'm like, no, it's an all right movie.
Do you think it was scarier than the original? Because I thought the original was really freaking scary. Like that one kid right there who gets his head blown off.
Okay, so the thing about him, in the original, he is more of this kind of quippy, almost comic relief sort of thing, and he's way more present in the original. He is there for a lot more. He still serves the same kind of purpose where he's kind of guiding him along. He's like, okay, this is how things work. But in the original, he pretty much lays out the guidelines. This is how the pet cemetery works. Whereas in the new one, he kind of shows up. He's like, hey, the fucking ground's tainted. Have fun. And then just like disappears. And that's it. And he shows up like a couple times after that. But in the original, he was definitely there way more. And obviously, the thing, like, I would say he's definitely way more, his wounds are way more intense looking in this one.
I guess my question is, do you feel like comparing it to It, because that's kind of the flavor that we're getting, and that's what we're going to base everything off of, I think, with this new Stephen King renaissance, is we have like the old sort of cheesy 90s, trying to be horror Stephen King movies, and then we have this brand new flavor, which is intensely horrific and raw and kind of just in-your-face horror. Do you feel like if you were to compare the original It with the new It, does the old Pet Cemetery and the new Pet Cemetery kind of give you that same flavor?
Yes, I would say so. Specifically because the original one, it did kind of have like more comic relief and sort of things to it, and then the newer one definitely drifts away from that, and it's definitely all trying to be
just like gritty realism. I feel like the second It brought, the new It brought a gritty realism to the story, whereas the original ones had a little more camp. So do you feel like Pet Cemetery did the same thing? Yeah, kind of. And there's also the other like storylines that are going on, like Rachel and her sister. That like ends differently, like the storyline behind that. So in the original, I'm just going through everything. In the original, her disease kills her, which is like spinal meningitis. It ends up killing her. Whereas in the new one, it's Rachel's fault. Mm-hmm. They get left alone. She's like, I'm too scared of her. I'm just going to use the dumbwaiter, and she ends up falling down to her death because she tries to get out of the dumbwaiter herself. So and obviously, all right, so in the original, it was also a dude cast as the sister. Yeah, and he had some really like weird things that he could do under the prosthetics, just because of like
this one.
Yeah, so he could, like, I feel like his face and like features didn't quite fit in the prosthetics, so it kind of stretched everything out and made it look real weird. Whereas in the new one, they definitely like go along. In the new one, it's definitely
mocap it. Or?
Well, it's a woman that's cast, and she is also closer in age to who she's supposed to play.
Okay.
Whereas he was like I think significantly older, but still it was like a different flavor for the things. But
anybody have any opinions that has seen it? Anybody have thoughts, feelings? Yes.
I think the kid in the new one was a lot creepier.
Yeah.
When they came back,
She got you.
her face and everything, she actually looked like she was.
But you also in the new one, you definitely got to see a lot of decay, like as it progressed.
And I
like,
think that's part of the awesomeness of bringing back Stephen King and a new renaissance for the new era is that we have the ability to do so much more realistic horror. Like, for example, the giant spider in It. Like, back then they were just like, well, we've got this thing laying around, let's use it. Whereas now we're like, no, we're going to invest money in this and we're going to make something that is truly not only horrific, but that stays in your mind with, CGI, live props, mechanics, whatever they're using. It's going to put you in that world more, which is why I think they don't have to rely on camp anymore.
See,
So-
I mean, but then we're getting into this weird like area where modern horror, a lot of the studios want CGI. They're like, we got money, let's throw money at this shit, CGI everything. So, not Stephen King, but going back to John Carpenter's The Thing versus the new Thing, the prequel, they actually filmed the entire thing with prosthetics, animatronics, all practical effects. And the studio said, no, fuck that, throw money at it, CGI over everything. So they scrapped the entire thing. You can still find a couple clips where they actually have scenes that were filmed with the prosthetics, and oh my god, the prosthetics and the animatronics that they used looked amazing. Way better than the CGI that they ended up using in the actual final release. So I think it's getting to this point where a lot of people still want to use prosthetics. They still want to use like practical effects. And I really appreciate that. Lots of times they look better. Obviously there are some things that can't be done with those that are just too large in scale that require the use of CGI. But I think there should still be a real appreciation for the people that can still actually do the prosthetics and practical effects.
One of the things I liked with the remake was that they played with your expectations, knowing that it's a remake. So they had shots that were almost exact same thing as what was in the original, and then they changed it at the last minute.
Yeah.
And they did that several times, so it's kind of this meta thing where they're calling back on it, but they're
Subverting the
making
narrative.
a lot of people that have seen the original are the ones that are watching the new one.
Yeah.
And I think that's what it is. Like, I think that these new movies, this Stephen King-assance, is for those of us that grew up with Stephen King stories. Like, it is geared towards those of us that, when we were younger, we watched all of these miniseries and everything in the 90s, and now are coming back to it to see what they can do new. Now, even if you're talking about prosthetics versus CGI, I think even with this time span, we still have better prosthetics, better like body horror if you decide to go that way. And
practice,
I think,
though.
yeah,
We've gotten time to.
and I think it just creates the world of Stephen King a little bit better than what they were able to give us when we were younger, which is why I'm okay with a Stephen King-assance. And I know somebody out there is going to greenlight a Maximum Overdrive remake.
I mean, I feel like
starring Vin Diesel and The Rock.
it's been remade, just not like officially remade.
Maximum Overdrive is, in my opinion, the worst Stephen King adaptation ever made.
I've never read the book or short story.
It doesn't matter. Just watch the movies, and you want to gouge your eye out.
I've watched the movie.
It's so
I remember
bad.
falling asleep to that DVD and waking up to like AC/DC, man, I don't remember what AC/DC song it was, but it was on the like title menu, and I would just wake up and it would just be 30-second clip of this AC/DC song over and over and over.
Has
again.
anyone
Like,
here
what the
seen
fuck
the
is going
original
on?
Maximum Overdrive? Yeah. Everybody else, do yourself a favor. That is not on your list.
Go ahead and watch it. Go
That
ahead
is
and
not
watch it.
part-
It's
yes?
fun.
It was fun.
It's a fun movie.
It's the kind of
fun
movie you watch with your friends and go, why does this exist?
By the way, if you don't know what Maximum Overdrive is, it's a movie about
There you go.
Yeah, about like machines coming to life, mostly cars. Although a vending machine does shoot like a can in some dude's nuts. So if you're into some like,
It's the campiest Stephen King movie.
yeah, and they have
ever.
this weird truck
Yeah,
with the
this is
Green
a thing.
Goblin on the front of it for whatever reason. I
This
don't know
is
why
a
the Green
thing.
Goblin's there.
Who is? Is that
Oh,
Emilio?
yeah, Emilio Estevez, isn't it?
Yeah.
Then I'm already sold.
Okay,
Like,
and now we're gonna have to do a reaction to our to
All right,
Maximum.
Let me
I'm
look
down.
at
I'm
nothing
down.
else
I
so
might
I
slow
can-
it. I don't know.
Okay, so join our channel if you
Oh
want to
yeah.
see
By
us
the way,
shitting all over
Pet
it.
Cemetery does end differently than the original.
But don't tell us how.
I specifically avoided that. I did not spoil how it ends, but it does end differently. So.
What did you think about the ending? Did you prefer this ending or the other?
This ending is definitely more ominous, I feel like. So, I'm okay with this ending.
Don't spoil it.
I haven't read the book, so I actually don't know how the book ends. So, do you know have you read the book?
I don't remember how it ends.
Okay. So,
It's been a
I
very
don't know how
long
to compare
time.
it to the book.
Watching the first ending, I was just like, why? And watching the new ending, I felt like it had like a little bit more kind of closure.
Yeah.
I don't feel like it really had that much closure, you know, it was kind of open-ended to what happened and what happens later on past that.
La la la
Yeah.
la la la.
You kind of just figure out.
Well, I mean, all right. So it literally starts where it ends. So you see the ending first.
Okay, great, but I don't want to know the ending.
Yeah, we're not telling you the ending. I
Okay,
didn't tell you
cool.
the ending.
No one told you the ending.
It's different.
I'm in a spoiler-free box. Yes.
No, but what I was gonna comment on was like really did actually like the dad in the new one versus the original because after everything, after she's been brought back to life, you know, not spoiling a whole lot, but
My heart is
you start to
pounding
see-
right
You can see the regret because versus like Gage going to the neighbor's house, I can't remember his name.
Judd.
Herman Munster.
Judd, yeah. She doesn't go there. She goes back to the house and you can see the regret in his face, like in a scene they're like next to each other and she's like asking all these different questions, realizing, hey, I was dead. What's
Yeah.
going on? Why am I here? And he's just like, let's just go to sleep.
Yeah, it's like I immediately regret this decision.
I've made poor choices.
But you don't like he doesn't do it until like almost to the very end where it's just too late. It's just
It's like, well, I've already gone this far. Can't go back now.
All right, so we're just about coming to the end. Any last bits that we need to cover? Anything else? Any other things that you guys want to see remade?
I think, well, in terms of this, I think the only thing that didn't work with the remake was Judd. I actually preferred the original.
You prefer the original Judd? Well, so he gets introduced real differently. I have to prefer the original introduction for Judd, where he just like, oh shit, kid's about to get run over, carry him out of the way. Yeah, that I preferred that as opposed to the new one. It made him seem way less of a creeper in the original one, because in this one he definitely seems real fucking shady.
There he is.
Oh yeah, these are the ones from the original.
Is that seriously Herman Munster? I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Herman Munster.
I hadn't really considered that.
Here's what I do think that in today's world would work as a remake. I think Cujo would work as a great remake because we're all about the dogs right now.
That's
so
true.
nothing,
Cujo would be a pit bull now.
right? Nothing would hurt Kate more than to see that movie. Have you seen the original Cujo?
No.
No.
Say it with me. No.
No. That would be a tough one for you to watch. I think Cujo would work.
I wouldn't mind seeing a Langoliers remake.
Oh,
I
that
really
Langoliers
enjoyed
need.
the Langoliers.
I've got to be. You and I have to be one of the two people on the planet that liked the Langoliers miniseries. Like I loved what's his name.
Yeah, when they're stuck at the airport.
Yeah,
Yeah, I loved it. I'm sorry.
exactly. It can be better. Is the thing.
Here, the only problem with that one really was the CGI effects.
Yeah.
Like they were trying to use Windows 95 to like make these.
I'm
creatures.
pretty sure it was pre-Windows 95.
Was it
I'm
really?
pretty sure that was like maybe 92 or 93.
There you go.
I mean, obviously we
How do you
can
spell
look
that?
G-O?
Lango.
L-I.
Yeah, there
There
you
it
go.
is.
Boom.
But I loved what's his name? Oh God, from Perfect Strangers as the bad guy.
Yeah.
I loved
there we
his
go.
Oh, yeah,
weird.
this is-
There we
There's
go.
the CGI right there.
If anybody's seen Tremors, it's pretty much just air graboids.
But I liked him. I actually enjoyed him. But I agree with you. I would love to see a remake of The Langoliers. Especially with better CGI. But I still like
I'm
the
really
original.
surprised how many people I can mention The Langoliers to, and they're like, what? I'm like, you know, that Stephen King miniseries back where there's like the little flying monsters that eat time.
I like the suspense that is created within that story, because until the Langoliers show up and everything goes downhill,
There's a human antagonist,
and not just that. There's a human antagonist, but you also have this ominous like sound that is slowly approaching, and you don't know what it is. Everything is frozen. Nobody is there, and I love the concept of it, of being displaced from time, and something comes and eats the past. I think it's really interesting. Yeah, it's a bit of a hot mess. Okay, fine.
Yeah. It's 90s as hell.
It's
That's
so
the problem.
90s.
It's 90s as hell.
But I love all these different characters. They all have real personalities. I think these actors did a great job. So I don't know. I would love to see a remake. I would love to see a remake of that one. And of course, Cujo. Any other remakes you guys want to see in the last few minutes? Firestarter
would be good.
Yeah.
I would enjoy that.
Yeah, I mean, the original was good. Drew Barrymore was great. But
Did you see the sequel? Like, I don't remember what the hell the sequel was called. But
I don't
I
think
definitely
anybody
watched the sequel.
No.
It wasn't as good, obviously.
course.
There may even been a third one. I don't remember.
Any other last thoughts, minutes, ideas on Stephen King?
Like a movie of Under the Dome instead of that terrible TV show.
We're not fans of the show. I didn't watch the show. So.
I saw a few episodes. I never finished it.
And we had not good feelings about them? No?
Yeah, the first season was good.
Holy
Okay.
shit, there are multiple seasons.
Oh, and one of our friends, one of the other nights, wanted us to mention The Mist. He would love to see a remake. He didn't love the show, hated the movie / ending. I like the ending to the movie, but whatever. I'm into Edgar Allan Poe stuff. But
Wait,
everybody
there
wants...
was actually... Wait, was there a movie of The Mist?
This one?
That one?
With,
okay.
what's his
Oh, that's right.
With
I
the
did see
great
that.
controversial ending
That's
of
right. I do
whatever,
remember that now.
1998.
I must have blocked it out or something. I don't know.
I think everybody blocks that ending out. But yeah, there's this movie, but a true to the story representation on screen of The Mist has not happened yet. And then another one that I really love that always gets thrown to the side is Storm of the Century. I liked the original Storm of the Century's miniseries. I'd love to see it as a movie done new. Colm Fiore played the bad guy in the original one, and it was pretty good. I'd like to see a remake of that one. All right.
We need to wrap
I think
up.
we're good. Yeah, because we got to get to our Game of Thrones panel. So if you guys are Game of Thrones fans, we are going to the panel 3 to 4. Also, follow us on YouTube, please.
And that's
Check
in
out our
room
flyers.
351A, and I suggest getting there early.
They will
in
probably
case they
move
don't give
us.
us a bigger room.
They will
'cause
probably
it will
move us.
be full.
Let's do
So-
our thing.
We are the Knights of the Drunk Watch.
And
And
now
now
our
our talk has ended.
All right, thanks
Thank
everyone
you
for
guys.
coming.
Thank you.
Thanks for nerding out with us.